Hi, I'm Justin Gary, and I'm here to teach you how to play SolForge Fusion. To build a playable SolForge Fusion deck, you need to select two Forgeborn from two different factions. Each Forgeborn comes with 30 cards that are uniquely selected for that Forgeborn so that no two are ever the same. That includes 10 level 1 cards, 10 level 2 versions of those same cards, and 10 level 3 versions of those same cards. To build your playable deck, simply select the two different level 1 decks and shuffle them together. That becomes your 20 card starting deck. Take the level 2 cards and level 3 cards and set them aside for later use. Lastly, you'll select which of the two Forgeborn you want to be your main character. You'll set that one to the side of the board. The other one will not be used during play. Set your starting health to 50 and randomly determine which player has control of the forge on the first turn. And now you're ready to play. Each turn in SolForge Fusion, both players will draw 5 cards from their 20 card deck. You will alternate playing cards back and forth until both players have played 2 cards, at which point we'll move to combat. The player with the forge plays first. There are 2 types of cards you can play in SolForge Fusion: creatures and spells. Creatures are played into one of the 5 lanes of combat. So I'll start off by playing a shifting bear into the middle lane. The coolest part about SolForge Fusion, and the most important thing to remember, is that every card levels up when you play it. So because I played the level 1 shifting bear, I get the level 2 shifting bear from my level 2 pile, and I put it into my discard pile. Later on in the game, I'll get access to those higher level cards. Now, since I've played my card, now it will be my opponent's turn to play a card, and I'll play a card out of their hand for them. In this case, they're going to play a spell, Dreadbolt. Spells don't go into lanes like creatures. They do what they say, and then they move to the banish pile. But just like creatures, they level up. So we're going to grab the level 2 version of Dreadbolt and put it into my opponent's discard pile. Dreadbolt destroys this poor little shifting bear. So not only does Dreadbolt go to the banish pile, but so does the shifting bear. It's important to remember that every card that you play will never go back into your deck. The only cards that go back in your deck are the cards that you don't play, and then the leveled up versions that you'll get access to in later turns. Now, since my opponent has played a card and I've played a card, it's now, as the Forge player, I now get to play a second card. I'm also going to play a spell. I'm going to play Burnout. Burnout allows me to get a spell sprite minion and put it into play. Minions are a special card type that come in starters, and they're the same and they're accessible by all different kinds of decks. So I'll once again put that spell sprite minion into the middle lane. I'll get the leveled up version of Burnout and put it into my discard pile, and then the Burnout banishes itself. Now my opponent will play a card. My opponent is going to play their own creature, the Bone Scythe Reaver. Now, because they don't have the Forge, their creatures are played to the back row of the lane. As the player with the Forge, I've been playing mine to the front, and I'll explain why this is relevant later. Bone Scythe Reaver also has a special ability called Deploy. Deploy means whenever the creature is played, you use that ability right away. In this case, Bone Scythe Reaver has Deploy power that destroys a minion. Unfortunately for me, I have a minion in play. So after getting the level 2 version of the Bone Scythe Reaver and putting it into the discard pile, I'll take this minion card and get rid of it. Unlike regular creatures and spells, minions don't go to the banish pile, they just get set aside whenever they're destroyed. After both players have had an opportunity to play 2 cards, as well as use any special abilities on creatures they control, you will move to combat. I've set up a scenario here to show all the different things that can happen during combat. Let's take a look. In combat, each lane resolves simultaneously, but we'll go through them one by one. If a creature is in the front lane and there's nothing across from it, then it will do its attack value in damage to the opponent. In this case, Aranti Heartseeker has 3 attack, so we'll knock the opponent from 50 down to 47. The objective of SolForge Fusion is to knock your opponent down to 0 before they do the same to you. Now in the second lane, the Ossuary Mech is opposed by a Transcendent Biologist. In this case, the creatures will do damage to each other. 4 attack will do damage to the 2 health of the Transcendent Biologist, which is enough to defeat it, and the Transcendent Biologist will do 2 damage back to the Ossuary Mech. When a creature is defeated, it's banished and will never come back into play. And if a creature takes damage, you can mark that damage either with the included token cards or with a dice or any method that you prefer. Damage will remain until a creature is removed from play. If there's 2 creatures in the front, they'll do damage to each other, just like the last scenario. 4 attack is enough to take out Sigmund Fraud over there, and 5 attack is enough to take out the Flameshaper Savant. So in this case, both of these creatures would be destroyed and moved to the banish pile. If there are 2 creatures in the back row, those creatures will not initiate combat. Creatures in the back row don't initiate combat, so nothing will happen in this lane here. And similarly, since the Bone Scythe Reaver is in the back row, it will not initiate combat in this lane, so nothing else will happen, and that's how you resolve combat. After combat, there's a short end of turn procedure. At the end of each turn, you change control of the forge by flipping the colored forge to your opponent's side. Any creatures that are in the back row move to the front. And you discard any cards you did not play into your discard pile, the same place where your leveled up cards are, and then draw a new hand of 5 cards. Now you're ready to go to the next turn. Okay. The last major concept in SolForge Fusion is the end of cycle and leveling up your Forgeborn. Every 3 turns, when you end the turn, instead of just drawing cards, in which case it will always be the last cards in your deck, so if you ever see that your deck is empty, that's a good clue that it's time to level up. Instead, you shuffle your discard pile into your deck, and then you'll draw a hand of cards from that. So that's how you're going to start getting access to your high level cards. So after the first 3 turns, you'll get access to your level 2 cards. After the next 3 turns, you'll get access to level 3 cards, and so on. Now, the other thing that happens is you start to get access to your cool Forgeborn powers. So after your first 3 turns and your first shuffle, you'll get access to the level 2 Forgeborn power on your Forgeborn. After the next 3 turns, you'll get access to your level 3 power. And after the final 3 turns, you'll get access to your level 4 power. If the game goes on more than that, it moves into sudden death, and the player with the highest life total wins. But most of the time, someone will be dead by then. The way you use a Forgeborn power is anytime when you could play a card in your turn, in addition to playing a card, you may also activate your Forgeborn power. However, you can only use that power once during the 3 turns of the cycle. If you end the cycle without using the power, you lose it, but you will get access to the next one. So you want to make sure to use that power at a key strategic moment throughout those 3 turns. You already know all the basics to play SolForge Fusion, but games like this come alive with all the unique powers and abilities that cards can have. I want to talk through a few of them now so that they can be more clear. The first one is Activate. Creatures that have an Activate power can be used anytime you could play a card in addition to your card play for the turn. So for example, the Oronti Heartbreaker can activate, which means you'll kind of turn it a little bit sideways to show that you've activated it, to give another one of your creatures +4 attack. So I'm going to give this Shifting Bear, who only has 1 attack normally, and I'm going to boost him up another 4, so now he would have 5 attack permanently. Next, let's talk about mobility. Cards with mobility can activate to move that many spaces in the turn. In this case, Ghoulish Drake has mobility 2, so I can activate it to move it up to 2 spaces, which really could let it go anywhere in the board. You'll also notice that Ghoulish Drake has a deploy power. That means that the turn that you play Ghoulish Drake, you could upgrade one of the cards in your discard pile, which means that you level it up by banishing the card and getting the higher level version and adding it to your discard pile. Next, let's talk about Defender. Cards with Defender are always played to the back row, regardless of whether or not you have the Forge. And if a creature ever gains Defender, it moves to the back row. Creatures with Stealth ignore any creatures in the back row. So in this case, the Camouflage Skeleton would be able to do 4 damage directly to me, ignoring the Tormenting Summoner in the back. Creatures with Aggressive always start in the front row, regardless of whether or not you have the Forge. If a creature gains Aggressive, it moves to the front row. Creatures with Breakthrough do additional damage beyond what's required to defeat the creature across from them directly to the opponent. So in this case, the Shardplate Delver's 5 attack is 1 more than enough to defeat Sigmund Fraud, so that will deal 1 damage directly to me. Some cards refer to replacing. Replacing a creature happens when you play a creature in the same lane as a creature that's already there. Since there can be only 1 creature in a lane at a time, any creature that was there is banished, and then any replacement effects would occur. So in this case, the Shardplate Delver replaced the Shifting Bear, so his deploy power would give him an additional +5 attack and +5 defense.